All of us here know about the controversial relationship of John Lennon and Yoko Ono. Back in the late 60s, they were constantly in the news for a variety of reasons that went from politics to full-on nudity. In the eyes of the media, even though John Lennon was always the risky Beatle, he was still relatively normal before Yoko appeared. And for many, that was a clear sign that she was corrupting John in some way. She instantly became the most hated human in the whole world, and every piece of music, film, or poetry was immediately ridiculed. But could it be that this was only because the fans hated her and she was actually a misunderstood genius too far ahead of her time? Well, I can't believe that I'm going to make a video that has barely anything to do with music, but I needed to talk to you guys about this because I've been getting a lot of comments recently. I've been uploading a lot of videos on John Lennon and Yoko Ono's discography, like the Sometime in New York City album, the Imagine album, and the Fly album, and most of the times when I do those sort of videos, I make a lot of negative comments about Yoko, make fun of her vocalizing sessions, where she screams like a banshee, and it's awful no matter how you interpret it, I understand if she had like one album doing that, it would be interesting in a certain way. I've said multiple times in this channel that the Two Virgins album by John Lennon and Yoko Ono, part of the Unfinished Music trilogy, is kind of interesting the first time you listen to it, but now her entire career, for a vast majority of her discography, has had the same vocalizing sessions that don't really appeal to anybody. So that makes her music a very vulnerable target to make fun of. It's really simple. You just have to play a clip of her talking about peace and love and how her music has inspired people, and then the next minute you just add her doing this. But I've never really explained what is it about Yoko Ono that I don't like, which led a lot of people to call me a misogynist and a racist, saying that the only reason why I don't like her music is because she's Asian or she's a woman, which is completely ridiculous. A lot of people are also theorizing that the reason why I don't like her is because she broke up the Beatles, and the Beatles are my favorite band of all time. She corrupted John Lennon, which I don't really think that's the case. I've said multiple times in this channel that the death of Brian Epstein, the hiring of Alan Klein, the creation of Apple had a lot more to do with the band breaking up than Yoko Ono herself. But yeah, man, these sort of comments annoy me quite a bit, mainly because I know for a fact that they come from people that don't really know what they're talking about. When you explore the surface level information we have on Yoko, it sounds great. She sounds like a great person. I mean, you have a human rights activist, feminist icon, anti-war in the early 70s. I mean, she sounds like a great person. But when you explore a little bit deeper, then you begin to find some dark things. For example, the way that she approached John Lennon in 1968, how she was really invasive in his marriage with Cynthia Lennon. You have how she basically neglected Julian Lennon after his father died. You have all the problems she had with Paul McCartney, with the songwriting credit of many of the songs. I mean, she wasn't really a good person to have around, but that's all personal stuff, and I don't really want to focus on that, because that's not really my main issue with Yoko Ono. It all boils down to her music ideologies and the way that she perceives art. And it's a really hard thing to talk about because art is subjective. Everyone gets to pick the music they like. I don't have a say on, what's good and what's bad. I can only give my opinion, and an artist is more than free to release whatever type of music they want. And I totally agree with that, and I do believe that this mentality is what gave us genres like punk music, metal, blues, folk, rock and roll, genres that at the moment were considered ugly or not fit for the mainstream, but now are some of the most popular out there. I do believe that this idea that everyone gets to make the kind of music they like is what makes music so diverse and so unique. However, the Fluxus movement took that idea and brought it to a whole nother level, because basically what she defends is that you don't need to be an artist to make art. You can be talentless, not know how to sing, not know how to play the guitar, not know how to play the piano, not know how to write songs, and still make art that's valuable. And this on paper sounds like a good thing. Everyone gets to make art. Everyone is an artist. It sounds like a beautiful idea. However, the result was this.
No matter what people say, when the work is created, that has a vibration that they cannot kill. And that vibration is going to be covering the earth and changing the earth, heal the earth, and bring world peace.
By the way, I'm recording this while I'm editing this video. What the hell is this music video? Like, Yoko is like lost in the middle of a forest and John is looking for her. You can see him running and then walking and then running again. And Yoko, instead of actually looking for him, she's like yelling and posing in the middle of a forest. This is so bad. Oh my god. Here's the difficult part. If you had to explain to someone what's the problem with this performance, you couldn't really say anything of value because the other person can just say, well, I like it, and your whole argument is destroyed. I can tell you a million things. I don't believe there's any intent. I don't believe there's any passion. I don't believe that she actually knows what she's doing the moment she's vocalizing. I believe that she's just putting a bunch of air in her throat and letting it all out and see what comes out. You know, I don't believe there's any plan or structure in this entire song or performance. I don't even believe there's any emotion behind those screams. But she can just say that I don't get it, and that destroys my whole argument. So it's really complicated to explain to people why this is such a big problem for me. Especially when in this same channel I've praised albums like Sinner Get Ready by Lingua Ignota, in my opinion the best album of 2021, and that album also offers a lot of vocalizing and vocal performances that are not necessarily pretty, but have a songwriting purpose in the song. So where do you draw the line? Who has the authority to decide which performance is valid and which isn't? That's what many of her fans and actually Yoko herself argue when she faces any criticism. If anyone likes it, that means it has value, therefore you can't say that it's not art, which is a really annoying concept, you know, because there's people who dedicate their entire lives to creating something, you know, even if it's just months or a year or maybe a week or even a day. When you go to albums like Please Please Me recorded in 13 hours, it doesn't really matter. They put a bunch of passion, effort, and just talent into making that album, and then you come in here, yell into a microphone for about an hour and say that what you made was music. In my opinion, that's really disrespectful. You're right, you know, it's a technicality. On a technicality, you're definitely correct, but that doesn't mean I have to agree with you or that I have to perceive you as an artist. Let me give you another example. I want to go to her album released in 1971, Fly, supposed to be the mirror album to the Imagine album of John Lennon, and let me show you some of the songs in here. The album has multiple tracks that are kind of questionable. Actually, not kinda, fully questionable, including the track Don't Worry Kyoko. The first time I heard this song, I literally jumped out of the couch. I was spooked. I was not ready for those vocals, and that's gonna happen quite a few times in this album, so be warned if you want to listen to this piece of music. In my opinion, one of the worst albums ever made, but that's not even the worst part of this album. If you want to understand the extent of this concept art thing that she kind of paraded around the early 70s, then listen to this wonderful piece of music here. Hold on, it's not ready. We have more. That's it. That's the song. I'm not fucking with you. That's literally the song. That's it. That's the full song. And I'm not taking anything out of concept. That's the full thing. You can go ahead and listen to it. It doesn't connect two parts of the album because maybe if the previous song was about taking a shit, then maybe this would be a good interlude to kind of like, you know, take the song away. But that's not the case. This is simply a toilet flushing in the middle of an album for no fucking reason. That's how bland and boring and uninspired so much of her music and art overall is. Her version of the Plastic Ono Band is equally terrible. Sometime in New York City is a really bad album too, even though John Lennon has a few good songs in there. The Unfinished Music Trilogy is the worst piece of music in the 1968 and 1969 years, and then you have a little more mainstream efforts in Filling the Space and Approximately Infinite Universe. She uses a very normal approach to both songwriting and instrumentation in this albums, which is kind of weird because you're basically contradicting all of your work in the previous albums and all the talks about, you know, the anti-art movement you were a part of for so many years. As you get closer to the 80s though, she improves quite a bit. Even though her work in Double Fantasy is nothing fantastic, actually, it kind of ruins the album because John Lennon has some of his best songs in this albums, but I do believe that it's way better than anything she did prior to this albums. And then you, of course, you have Season of Glass, in my opinion, one of the saddest albums ever made. The bloody glasses with the glass of water, the imagery, the lyrics, and everything that surrounds that album is very very sad and depressing, because even though I don't like Yoko Ono, losing the love of your life is something I don't wish on anybody, and I can only imagine all the pain that she was going through. So I do believe that she put a lot of effort and passion into this album, and you can tell because this is an album I can actually listen to. She did make some decent contributions to the dance pop scene and the synth pop genre, but apart from that, her musical output is very poor and of very low quality. So yeah, I don't really agree with anyone who says she's an underrated genius. I think you're just fooling yourself because you want to be different. I honestly cannot believe, I won't believe, that there's anyone who enjoys even 50% of the albums she put out.
Every day on a headline it says 2,000 people killed, 150 burned, And we are sort of used to thinking people in terms of figures. But if we had a sort of file of people's smiling faces, then that means that everybody will have a chance when they're born. They know that just once in their life they might be able to communicate with the whole world.
What? This sounds like a lovely idea, but I don't know if I'm being stupid because I don't know what she meant. But the quality of her music is not something that bothers me all that much. I do believe that a lot of fans exaggerate the fuck out of many of these albums, but at the end of the day, I can just ignore the music and that's it. I can just live my life without paying attention to anything that she does. But the constant comments that she makes about John Lennon, about Paul McCartney, about the Beatles, and how she victimizes herself, and to kind of argue that she was misunderstood and to raise the relevance of her art, it's really annoying. I know that what I said may sound a little weird, but imagine if you were to input yourself in a vast majority of the compositions made by John Lennon after 1968. A lot of people seem to believe that without Yoko Ono, John Lennon wouldn't be a great songwriter after the White Album. When we're talking about the guy who made Strawberry Fields Forever, Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, Tomorrow Never Knows, I'm Only Sleeping, Dr. Robert, so many amazing songs prior to meeting this woman, Norwegian Wood, Help, You've Got to Hide Your Love Away. If anything, you'll actually notice that John Lennon's creative output was lower after he met Yoko Ono in 1968, as clearly seen in albums like Abbey Road and Let It Be. When you go to any album prior to that, you'll find that John Lennon was the main songwriter of a lot of these albums, especially in the Beatlemania years. But after that, it was Paul McCartney leading the charge in every single one of these albums. Now listen, I partly understand what you're talking about here. The fact that he was in love with Yoko means that all those beautiful songs like Don't Let Me Down, Oh My Love, and Love were written for Yoko. Therefore, without Yoko, you wouldn't have those songs. I understand that. But that doesn't mean that we wouldn't have a list of other incredible songs that maybe he would have written for another woman. The fact that so many fans are so willing to forget about the fact that we're talking about one of the greatest and most important songwriters in the history of music just to prove a point is maddening to me. I don't understand. I know that John Lennon himself credited Yoko with writing credits and with production credits, but he also put her in the personnel of many songs where she didn't participate at all. We know this because there's many moments where John listed Yoko as personnel in the piano and the vocals where she didn't play either in that particular song because there's no presence of her being included on the vocals. So clearly his word on who helped him write the songs is not really that valid because at the time he wanted everyone to think that Yoko participated in every little detail of his life. But even if you were an expert when it comes to listing the personnel in every single one of John Lennon's songs and, his participation with the Beatles after 1968, because yes, Yoko Ono is credited as a writer in songs like The Continuing Story of Bungalow Bill and Revolution Number 9, so technically she was a part of the Beatles songwriting force. But even after you made that clear, there's a lot of people who are then going to say, well listen, she's not an expert when it comes to music, we know that. We're talking about her conceptual art or her films. That's the good stuff when it comes to Yoko Ono. Let me show you some of her art. Before we get into it though, I must warn you that what we're about to get into is some really deep stuff. And if by any chance you don't know what she meant when she made these films, then you're the problem. You probably don't know what you're talking about and you need to be a little more intelligent. But this is just one example. When it comes to Yoko Ono and her films, things get a lot weirder and a lot more disturbing and maybe pointless, as you can see in the film number 4, released in 1967. Now, I can't really show it to you. You're gonna have to find it on the internet because it's just ass. You know, basically, it's Yoko Ono's ass naked on the screen. You cannot see her hips, her face, her back, nothing but ass. You can barely see the thighs. It's just ass. Then you have things like the film Self-Portrait of John Lennon's Anatomy. I think it was premiered in 1969, and no one really has like the footage of it. There's a couple of pictures in the internet where you can see parts or frames of the film, but basically you can see John Lennon's penis in that movie. Actually, a very detailed footage of his penis, or that's how it's been described. So there's that film of a fly going around a woman's body and like in her mouth or her lips, you know, and the whole message behind that was supposed to be like, hey, are people going to pay more attention to the fly or to the woman? That's literally it. There's a couple others. There's the Blink film where she blinks. There's also that one where she's like walking on the snow, and the whole point of that video, she's doing it like in a POV way, and the whole point of that film or recording, I don't even know what to call it anymore, is for you to imagine yourself walking through the snow. Literally, that's the whole point. There's a couple other films, but I don't really want to get into it. You have Apotheosis, which is that one film where they're dressed in like these black robes. There's a bunch of air balloons in the background. You have Rape. You can kind of guess how good that one is. I think you must get my point by now. When you explore the life and work of this woman, you'll find very little effort, very little creativity, a lot of pretentious behavior, a lot of childish behavior too, a lot of desire to be validated and unvalidated by a lot of people, a lot of desire to piss people off, you know, to be controversial, to input herself in the work of John Lennon, which maybe she deserves, maybe she doesn't, but the fact that she constantly talks about John Lennon and how her YouTube channel is like 4 re-uploads of the Imagine music video. Like, there's so many things that are so dodgy about this woman, you know, that I don't really think I need to explain myself any further when I've given you so many examples that show the uninspired nature of her work. And if you disagree with me still, and you want to say that she's a great artist, leave a comment down below and please do your best to explain why, in your opinion, she's a great artist, because I simply don't understand. I've heard her entire discography. I've seen many of the films that she has released that are actually available on the internet, and then I've seen many of her art exhibitions in places like New York City and the MoMA, for example, and I don't see anything attractive, anything of value. And of course, I'm well aware that my own personal opinion has no sort of value either. I'm just a guy talking on the internet. I'm just amazed by the amount of people that are willing to say that Yoko Ono was a genius, a misunderstood talent. I simply don't see it. So I'm really excited to see what you guys will have to say in the comment section.
A lot of his belongings that were auctioned off by Yoko, and a lot of his, you know, whether they were personal possessions or whether they were instruments, you know. And I mean, the most ironic thing is, with the settlement that I did receive, is that I've been buying his stuff back, you know, with that. So I'm buying his stuff back with his money, which is absolutely insane, you know.
And that is going to be it for today's video. I do apologize. I know this video is not really about music, but I hope you enjoyed watching as much as I enjoyed making it. If you did, go ahead and leave a like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any other videos that I upload. If you want me to talk about any other topics related to music, if you want me to check out a song, an album, or an artist, leave it down below as well. And I'll make sure to read it and fulfill your request as soon as I can. Once again, I hope that you enjoyed, and I hope that I can see you soon with a new video. But until then, bye.